Good evening, Littleton, and welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, January 25th, 2021. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
the
of the United States of
America,
America, and to the republic which stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's meeting will begin with organization, Pledge of Allegiance, and reading of the mail. That will be followed by department and board updates and requests. We have a COVID-19 update. We have the police department notification of recertification. We have Public Works snow and ice deficit spending, and the fire department live training at 119 Tehadawon Road. That will be followed by public input and members' updates. We also have a request for use of town property and streets for the filming of Marble from the Dexter series. That will be followed by a host community agreement review of the HCA with NBP2 Littleton LLC regarding 151 Taylor Street. That will be followed by town administrator, assistant town administrator update. We have two updates. The first one regarding Wellington Drive Connector Trail, the Mass Trails Grant Submission Authorization, and the second one with respect to 119 Tehadawon Road, authorization for filing permits. That will be followed by meeting minutes. We have meeting minutes of January 11th, 2021 to approve, and then we have anticipated adjournment of our meeting for the evening. So if you could, Mr. Ansaldi, start us off, please.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Two items for tonight to just mention. We had put in a request with MAPC for technical assistance with regard to the 40-yard district near the Littleton train station. MAPC has let us know that they've committed approximately 70 hours of MAPC technical assistance time to support in preparing the mapping and analysis related to the 40-yard project. I don't know, Joe, if you have anything further to add on that, or is that?
No, that sums it up great, Anthony.
All right, thanks, Joe. And the second thing is, and really both of these things, Joe has done a tremendous job really carrying the torch on these. With regard to the CDBG grant, the 5 communities hired Bailey Boyd Associates as the hired consultant for the grant. And Joe could speak to the grant, but there's 3 aspects, Joe. The forgivable loans up to $10,000. There's childcare subsidies, and then food pantries for the form of reimbursement for food and supplies, etc. Joe, I want to add anything to that? I know you're doing a tremendous job on that project.
Yeah, just last Friday, we put out a press release with the towns of Acton, Boxborough, Maynard, and Westford on the first element of this CBDG grant, that being micro enterprises, establishments that have 5 or less employees. That went live on Friday. I encourage people to visit the town's website for information on that. The second component, which, as Anthony said, is child care subsidies. That is something that's going to be going live on Friday. The press release will go out on Friday, as well as the material will be uploaded and available at that point. We're going to be working not only with the grant administrator, but also through our EHS department to make sure that we're handling these applications. The last thing ends up being a food pantry assistance, and those will be directly through the consultant to food pantries that serve the 5 towns that are part of this regional grant effort.
Thanks, Joe.
I'll just jump in here. Joe, from the very beginning, I think I mentioned this in previous weeks, but Joe was very instrumental in picking up this ball, and we had a very short window through which we had to commit ourselves and get some documents in, and Joe met the timeline and has been carrying the torch. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
just one of the few items that Joe just really is a tremendous asset for the town. So I know he really works hard, and I was really proud of this project. So thanks, Joe.
Excellent. So next on the agenda, we have department board updates and requests. We have a COVID-19 update.
Hey, Madam Chair, yes. So Littleton resident Katrina Wilcox Hagberg has been on the citizen panel to help the Board of Health through this COVID-19 pandemic. And I had an opportunity to listen to her update last week with the Board of Health. I asked her if she would take the opportunity to come to the select board meeting tonight so we can get the message out and keep everybody well aware and vigilant with regards to COVID-19 moving forward. So is Katrina, we let her in, Joe?
She's in.
Oh, fantastic. I'm sorry. I didn't.
I'm
Hi,
in.
Katrina. I'm sorry. I didn't see you. I had to scroll down. So I'm going to do this so we can see you a little better. There
Oh,
you go.
perfect. There she is.
Awesome. Hi, everyone.
Hi, good evening.
How are you all doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Can I share my screen? Might
Please.
be easier. I know that you have my slides, but all right. So I'm assuming you see the first slide. So as every Board of Health meeting, I start off with just a recap of the state data. These are the graphs of the trends for the 4 main metrics that were updated today. So I've filtered the dates to be November 23rd to January 20th, and the very tail end tends to you need a few days to catch up. So that's why I stopped it at January 20th. So that data is complete. And you can recall the last time I presented to you, I was really worried about what was going to happen over the Christmas and New Year holiday. So we're at the point now where we can kind of see where that is. So the good news is that the reopening rollbacks that the governor put in place, as well as some other public health interventions, have really kind of did their job, and we are actually looking like things are holding and returning to pre-Christmas levels, which is encouraging. So the number of cases went up right after New Year's. You can see that here. And then they've kind of fallen back down to pre-Christmas levels. And then the test positivity has done a very similar trend. It went right up after the New Year, and then we've come down to actually slightly lower test positivity than we had right before Christmas. So the incidence rate at the January 1st, or right at the beginning of the year, was 61.1 per 100,000, and it's now at statewide at 75.5. So it is higher than where we were a few weeks ago, but this leveling off is encouraging. And hopefully if we hold and kind of dip in the number of cases, the rate will go down with it. The other thing is hospitalizations have actually held steady, leveled off, as well as has the number of deaths. So when you take these 4 things combined, and the fact that they're moving in the same direction is really, like I said, it's encouraging. And while this leveling off is good news, it also gives people kind of a feeling like they can relax and maybe intermingle and do things that they weren't doing for the last month. So that's actually a concern, that this good news might make people change their behavior. So hopefully people don't do that too much. When you look at Littleton, we've had a very similar pattern to the state. Last week we had 59 cases, which was slightly lower than the week before, where we had 69. But compared to 2 weeks ago, it was 45. So this is the number of cases. 45 was at January 2nd, and 2 weeks later we had January 16th. These are 2 different groups of people, so you can compare them without any overlap. So we're slightly higher than we were at the beginning of the year. And our test positivity is about the same, so 4.56%. This makes us 9 weeks in the red. It's definitely, like I said, not a time to relax our behaviors, but we're hoping with the state lull that Littleton also sees a little decline here. So total cases to date were 384. And given the history of spread in our town, this really suggests that most people are still susceptible to getting COVID. And the other thing that's happening in our area is the UK variant has been detected in Boston. So that is the one that's more transmissible. It's more contagious. So if it spreads, you'll infect more people than you would before. So that means it's expected to be the more dominant strain by March. And that could really increase the pressure on our healthcare system and increase deaths if that really does take off. So really, it's not like we can all breathe a little bit right now, but it's not a time to relax and go have a backyard party with your friends, like all of your friends. So keep doing the things that we've been doing, which is wearing a high quality mask, maintaining your distance, washing your hands, meeting people outside, or improving ventilation if you have to be inside with people, all of those things. And one of the things I keep hearing over and over from the public health experts that I've been learning from is that they're really encouraging people to look at increasing the quality of their masks. So if you can get your hands on a KN95 mask or put a filter in your mask to make it more than any 2 or more layers is better. The more layers you have, the better. Or even double masking if you can. Those things are all, especially with a more transmissible variant around, something that you could do to help decrease your risk of contracting COVID. So the other thing that has started rolling out in the data is now that we've a year since the first case appeared in the US and we've had a lot of people infected and we have time since they've been infected, we start to see information about health impacts that are not hospitalization and death. Hospitalization and death are really the easy things to measure, and that's why we look at them. They're easy to look at early on when we're still trying to learn about other things. But there are actually some long-term impacts that are coming out that are really concerning. So long-term symptoms like fatigue, shortness of breath, cough, even after you recover, depression, muscle pain, difficulty thinking, or this brain fog thing is something that's coming out frequently as well. This fever that just keeps coming back up has been being described. And then there's some serious long-term complications like problems with your heart, like inflammation of your heart or lung function abnormalities, kidney injuries, neurological issues, such as some people don't get their taste and smell back, some sleep issues, memory problems, and then the psychiatric, which anxiety, depression, changes in mood are all things of concern that might impact somebody for the long term. The interesting thing is that even people who have not been hospitalized had mild illness report persistent symptoms or late symptoms like these. And then also young people or even people who are physically fit before they were infected have reported these long-term symptoms. So there's reason to try to reduce spread across our communities that are not related to hospitalization and death. This could impact someone for the long term and hopefully not for the rest of their life. So the other thing that's been talked about at Board of Health meetings and school committee brought up is this idea of pooled testing. And I bring it up to you guys because I'm sure you'll be need to be part of the conversation at some point. So currently the state is offering a pilot testing programs for K-12 schools. And let me back up a second. Our current testing strategy is actually based on the presence of symptoms or somebody who's a known close contact. So people with symptoms or those people with close contacts then go seek testing. And if they're positive, then the contact tracing and quarantine happens so that you kind of break the chain of transmission right here. So the things that we've learned is that studies are showing that transmission can occur 1 to 3 days before symptoms actually show up. So in addition to that, 20 to 40% of cases never report having symptoms. And so they're either pre-symptomatic or they're asymptomatic. They just don't have symptoms that appear. And it's estimated that up to 50% of spread in our spread across our community and our state can be attributed to this silent transmission from pre or asymptomatic individuals. So this is where our pooled testing strategy can be really useful to help break chains of transmission. So a pooled testing strategy is when you can either nasal swab or saliva samples from multiple people and put them together into one sample and run one PCR test through them. And if the pool comes up positive, then you test down to get to the individual who is positive. And this has a benefit because if somebody infected and that person became symptomatic, then you would catch them. But if they were not symptomatic, then you would miss them. And they would go on to infect somebody who's symptomatic and pre-symptomatic. And it could just keep going down the chain. So the good thing about pooled testing is that you catch it early. and that you can, if someone's, if you catch them early and before they become symptomatic or early in the cycle, then you can break this chain of downward transmission. And then if you're talking a school, then that person doesn't go to school and doesn't have the opportunity or the potential to cause cases within the school setting. So again, you're breaking chains of transmission. So the idea of pool testing, while they're targeting K to 12 individuals, because those are high density settings with lots of people hanging out for long durations, which is the kind of settings COVID really likes to spread in. But it does actually impact other people outside of school, because we also know that household transmission is a key driver of COVID. So that if you catch a positive individual from the school community, you're more likely to find people in the household that are also positive, and then can quarantine and isolate them from going to work or another school or another activity and spreading COVID that way. So this is a real, this would be a really beneficial tool for us to start thinking about employing to help keep COVID tamped down so it doesn't spread too fast. So this is actually a model that kind of depicts how these kind of chains of transmission progress. So as like cases rise, you end up, once you start a testing program, you're starting to break those chains so you can stop and they don't spread to another person. So over time, the number of cases decay. So this is actually a public health screening model that has 50% participation. And over a number of weeks, they've gone down to 0, basically. And even when there's an uptick, you kind of catch it early, then you can break it right back down and go to 0. So this is the same kind of testing programs that colleges employed here in Massachusetts, that we've seen with the US Armed Forces have used, professional sports teams have used. All these kind of things help to keep transmission at bay and identify cases early so that they can be removed before spread really takes off. And this kind of testing program is really important when you talk about a variant that is more transmissible. The earlier we can catch one case, before they spread to other people, then you can really stop spread or keep it from going everywhere quickly. So the other thing is these testing programs are actually a complement to vaccine rollout. So we need vaccines in order to stop COVID. We are going to need a really robust vaccine rollout. But in the meantime, if we can keep our cases lower, then there will be less spread. And then it's actually the vaccine can do its job even quicker. So these two go hand in hand, but it's going to actually take a while for us to get vaccines rolled out. I know the state was talking today about how, the federal supply is low and they're trying to roll it out, but also thinking of the clinical trials are underway for kids 12 and above, but those aren't expected to be done. So maybe in the fall, kids 12 and older will be able to be vaccinated, and kids less than 12 aren't, or maybe 2022 if we're lucky. So there's this long phase here before everyone can be vaccinated. So in the meantime, this testing program would be really helpful. So, and like I've said before, I just summarized, the benefit isn't just to the school. So the schools are an obvious place that would benefit because it's the most dense group setting in town, and an investment in this kind of testing program would definitely make sure that there aren't cases that are in the school and spreading very rapidly. It also gives them data that is much more reliable, frequent, and targeted for the population that that are in our schools, versus trying to make decisions based on the state level or town level data where we're missing some details. But there's also some really, like I said, real benefits to the community, where by breaking those chains of transmission early, then we can keep our rates down for the entire community, which would help keep people working and keep our businesses open and all of that stuff. So this kind of thing is really exciting, that we have an opportunity to try it if we just choose to. And then the other thing that came out today, and I thought was important to add, was that the state announced that phase 2 will begin on February 1st, and that individuals age 75 or older may begin to get vaccinated. So they said to visit mass.gov/COVID-19 vaccine for more information. And that is actually where you'll sign up for an appointment. They have all the locations where the vaccine's being distributed, and you can make your appointment there. Hopefully they've talked to Council on Aging, EHS, things like that, to help connect those members in our community to those kind of sites. But this is a nice thing to see that we're hopefully going to get some people in our town really vaccinated. So this is what I have today.
Katrina, thank you very much again for your passion and diligence in sharing this information with us. We really appreciate you coming to the board and sharing this information with the public. It's very helpful and informative.
You're welcome.
And sharing
Easily
in a way that even I
understood,
can
and I'm
understand.
sure, it's not an easy subject to explain to rank amateurs like us, but it's working.
Good.
I want better news next time. That's all.
I would love to. I thought I gave you pretty good news.
Yeah.
I think we're very lucky to have you. I'm not sure there's very many towns who can boast of a expert advisory panel. But thank you so much for that. I'm curious what would the process be for us to get involved in the pool testing for the school? Would that be the school board would reach out, or? Okay.
Yeah, so it's my understanding from the last school committee meeting that they're actually considering two options, and one of them is the state program, and that they've put the name in to get more information and to still be in the chain of learning about that. So I think, if I understand correctly, the logistics of both programs are there's a lot to work out to make this kind of program roll out, and I think they're trying to do that, or at least the people I've heard from. So any support that they need, hopefully they will. I know Anthony's been involved with that.
Yeah, so Matthew, we met with the company about 3 or 4 weeks ago about pool testing. We meaning myself, Mike Fontanella, and I think Lisa was on that call. Maybe Lisa wasn't. It's escaping me. But anyways, the same day that we were speaking to the company, the governor announced pool testing, and it would be, at least in the beginning, something that would be awarded to cities and towns at no cost. So Chairman Fontanella was working on this, and I know it was discussed at the school committee meeting, and he was going to let us know what he needed as far as support from us. I know Lisa Flanagan has her hand up, Madam Chair. Can I promote her in?
Please.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on.
Sure, of course.
So really tonight, Katrina does a great job explaining the surveillance testing and the pool testing. I just had a statement that I wanted to read, asking for requesting your support. I can explain a little bit more about what the pool testing would do for the town too. If I can read that for you.
Absolutely.
Right. So the Littleton Board of Health requests that the school committee and the select board and the administration start the process of surveillance testing in the program in the schools. Looking at all the incoming information, the new variants of the virus, which is much more contagious, we are still extremely susceptible to the COVID viruses. Littleton residents are doing a great job of social distancing and mask wearing. Littleton schools, hybrid and remote learning programs have kept the case numbers to a minimum due to the diligence of the teachers, the school nurses, the school committee, and the administration. We now have the opportunity for testing in the schools, and we should take advantage of it. At this moment in time, children ages 0 to 19 have the highest positivity rate, and only until a portion of the population, and including young adults and children, are vaccinated, can this disease be controlled. And during that time, the chances of the emergence and dominance of more contagious versions of the virus can increase. Currently, at least one variant has been found in the US, and still others have been identified elsewhere. There are many other positives to testing besides getting test results. Testing will add to the safety of populations, suppression of spread, and provide a valuable additional source of information to inform decision-making. Also, by including surveillance testing in the mitigation plan, it becomes more feasible to not only keep schools open, but also to expand access to in-school teaching and vital one-on-one educational services to students with needs. The school committee and its administration will be able to more effectively track the progress of mitigation, and respond quickly to in a focused manner. Surveillance testing provides a more prompt detection of the infection in asymptomatic and symptomatic individuals, thus contributing directly to the break in the chain of transmission, like Katrina was saying. The Littleton Board of Health is unanimously in favor of school surveillance testing. Our residents and local businesses are holding up their end of the bargain, following all the recommended protocols. So I think it's our turn to do something in our power to get this testing program implemented and keep the community healthy and safe. So respectfully yours, the Littleton Board of Health, Lisa Flanagan, Louise Nichols, Kevin Baker, Gino Fratelloni, and Mike Selbrd. So we appreciate your support when we get in touch with the school committee.
Excellent. Lisa, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Do we have any idea when that meeting might be taking place?
I think the school committee meets on Thursdays.
Okay.
They didn't meet last week, so I assume that
They do meet on Thursday this week.
but last week they didn't. So
No, they did not.
that the testing program would be something that they're going to discuss this week.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Great job as always.
You're welcome. If you guys have questions, let me know. I can always help you guys even if I'm not presenting in front of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Katrina. Now we are on to Police Department notification of reaccreditation.
Yes, we have Chief Penard with us, Madam Chair. Let's promote him.
How can you promote him? He's already chief.
That's a good point. All right, so he should be coming in.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Anthony, you're below me.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to grab it off the shelf then.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for having me tonight. With great pleasure, I'd like to let you guys all know that your police department is fully reaccredited. We met all 259 standards, unanimous vote at the Accreditation Commission, and there was 62 non-mandatory standards that we actually also met. So this is great news for us going forward. And I just wanted you to know, and as a token of my appreciation, I ordered a plaque and a certificate for the town hall. So let me just grab it off the shelf.
Here
You go. Here you go. Here you go.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, buddy. You got that? Okay. I'm hoping that you can hang that on the wall in the town hall somewhere if it's possible. And you know, it's quite an accomplishment. Deputy Chief Patterson oversees it. He is the manager of it, and Sergeant Ed Bussier worked tirelessly on this year. Going from certification to accreditation is some feat, but the work that goes into the reaccreditation is 10 times more, because now you implement everything, it's all fresh and new, but now you have to keep up with it and maintain it to make sure that all of the policies and procedures are being followed and met, not only through ourselves, but through the state. So thank you very much for having me on tonight, and I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much. Great job. And thank you to everybody involved.
Madam Chair. So I think for people listening at home, you could listen and hear accreditation, think it's like just some bureaucratic process, but I looked it up. Only about a third of the departments in Massachusetts succeed at this, and you're at the higher level. It's not just certified; it's accredited. So congratulations. I know it was a lot of work, and I think Littleton should be proud of you because you're doing a great job. It's like outstanding.
Thank you very much.
Good work, Chief.
Thank the whole department. With special thanks to Deputy Patterson and to Sergeant Bussier. Thanks.
Yeah.
You too, I guess.
I'm very
I
fortunate.
guess.
Anthony,
Well
pass that
done.
down to
Good
him.
job. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm only as good as the team we have. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief.
Next, we have Public Works, snow and ice deficit spending.
And we're gonna let our DPW Director, Chris Stoddard in.
Need some more snow.
Hello.
Good
We're gonna
evening,
get
how are
some
you?
more, good, how are you?
Good.
Light is a pain in the butt.
That's
Sorry.
right.
Put your head in the way.
Yeah, right, there we go.
So I keep trying to get the glare out of my windows here.
Yeah, so we're here. It's that time of year. We're almost broke. So in order to keep plowing snow and buying salt, we need to have you guys authorize us to deficit spend. We're not out of money in salaries, overtime yet, but we are out of money in materials. So we can't buy any more material at this point.
And it's usually appropriate for the public who may not follow it annually. This is kind of a quirk in state law. Correct me if I go astray, Anthony, but where we intentionally budget a smaller amount than we know we're going to need because you can never get it back if you budget it high. Is that right? From year to year?
Yeah, that's correct, Paul.
Watching for the first time and they're wondering why we didn't properly budget the snow and ice removal. It's one of the oddities of Massachusetts general law that, but we do provide for it. Chris, you plan for it. Cheryl, Anthony, everybody's, it's in the budget. It's just, this is the way we have to do it, right?
Right. That's right. It's a pretty much an annual process that we go through. Chris comes to us and says he's out of money, but
This is actually the latest I've ever been here. So that's something. Normally it's before Christmas.
Right.
I was going to say, it seems like it's been a relatively light winter so far. I was surprised you're already out of money, but
Yeah, no,
yes, you held out longer than you expected.
we have. And like I said,
Okay, good job.
salaries wise, we haven't gone over, but we will. If we get any amount of snow this week, we'll be over on salaries too. So yeah, it is definitely later than normal. Normally it's right around the Christmas, first of the year.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm of the opinion we should go ahead and plow the streets.
If that's the pleasure of the board, I have a motion ready.
Please.
Treat them as well.
I'll
What's
move
that?
select
Treat them
filibuster
as well.
this.
Treat them with ice. Treat them with salt and sand.
But we don't use sand. We don't use sand. We don't want to use sand.
I will move that the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31D, to approve incurring expenses in excess of the available appropriation for snow and ice removal for fiscal year 2021.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. DeCosta's aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox, Mr. Nordhaus,
Mr. Nordhaus is aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.
We're on to item 2D. We have the fire department live training at 119 Tehadawon Road.
Yes, if we can just promote, or bring aboard Chief Wadzinski into the meeting.
He's on his way in.
Thank you. Here he is. Hey,
Good
Chief.
evening, Chief.
Hey, good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. So this evening, we're coming before the board to obtain approval to potentially have a training burn at 119 Tehadawon at the home that was purchased by the town. So our first step in this process would be to obtain permission from the board and then move forward, and we'll obtain permission from conservation, the water department, building department, and the DEP. And once everything is obtained, then that would allow us to have the opportunity to have some live fire training on that premises. It's actually a very sound structure. It's a great training opportunity, especially for some of our newer career members who really have seen limited structure fire opportunities as you know, as fires kind of have decreased over the years. So this is just really a rare opportunity that we get every now and then when you know, a real sound building comes up that's going to be demolished anyway. It affords us the opportunity to have some very in-depth training. And we'd also like to open it up if there's a board member that would like to join us for the day or a portion of the day. We've done that in the past as we've done these training.
You know, I participated in 2 of those.
Yep.
And just so for the other board members, there was one on Harvard Road in Littleton, and then there was a joint project with the town of Harvard. We did one up there. And it's an amazing experience if you haven't already done it. But my second one was my last one, because while in the burning building on the floor, crawling around in full gear with my SCBA on, my tank mysteriously ran out of oxygen.
I don't know what happened there.
For the record, I was not on the scene.
So I got the message and I get the heck out of there. But yeah.
I would be downright gleeful if I was there. As you know, I've already participated in one live fire exercise, although it was not a controlled environment, but I'm absolutely on board. I guess I do. I'm glad you're talking to the DEP. I was, when I first read your email, I was a little concerned about the wetlands nearby, but I assume you'll take every precaution to protect those.
Absolutely. We have to follow very strict guidelines for the structure itself being sound, make sure that, you know, there's no asbestos, oil tanks, all of that stuff needs to be removed before the DEP would even certify it for us to use for live fire training. And then obviously conservation, water department, everybody else would come out and inspect the site, and everybody needs to sign off. If for some reason either a butters or another department or the DEP doesn't sign off on it, then we would just look at it to basically do some live physical training in it, cutting holes, rescues, dragging hose lines and stuff like to that nature. Prior to it being torn down. So really from the board, we're looking for permission to use it. And if all comes together, then have some live fire training there as well.
I promoted in Amy Green, Conservation. She's been working with Chief Wodzinski on that. Amy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I was just gonna say, I have a draft permit application ready, and I think later tonight.
Later tonight, yeah.
Might vote to approve to get some of this permitting started. So we can get the Conservation Commission permit out of the way, but we still need to line up the demolition contract itself.
Right, so we've got to go before the Historic Commission and so forth. So that's later on in the agenda, but not to keep Amy here all night with us. I didn't know if anybody had any questions.
So Anthony, you say if there was a motion, I know there's not one at this point in the packet. Should we just do it later, or do we want to make a motion now?
We don't need anything right now. We'll do that another day after. It's just authorizing me to sign those permits on your behalf. So we'll do that later.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, if I could just ask a quick question of the chief.
Sure.
Scott, is there any expected cost associated if you do have to do any kind of abatement?
If there's an asbestos abatement, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, that's already been done, and I believe it's cleared. There is no asbestos on the property. So any other demo.
Thank you for answering my leading question.
Yeah, the asbestos have been cleared, and it would have had to have been anyway. The one of the potential bidders on the demo is double checking to see if it's going to increase his costs, because I guess you can't recycle burnt material. So it's a different recycling.
Burn the bejesus out of it.
But there's less of it, so you know, maybe it's a wash.
Yeah, there won't be much left.
Wash.
All right, great. Thank you. Any other questions for Amy or the chief? Okay.
Thank you both.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have public input and members updates. Do we have anyone on the call with public input?
There's no hands raised, Madam Chair.
Okay. We'll go on to members' updates. We'll start with Mr. DeCoste.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matthew, I'm not sure if you had planned on saying anything about the Littleton Station Area Committee. You?
No, please, you go ahead.
All right. So we did have a meeting last Friday, I believe it was. I think it was Friday. But to go over kind of the plans for moving forward, and that is going to be something that's going to be presented jointly with the planning board, I believe this Thursday night. So that's in working with Peter Flinker, the designer, the consultant that we've hired to work with us. We've got something that we think is a nice deliverable, so it can really tell the story to the residents as well as to all the other boards in town, so that we can take a look at doing some sort of development on, I think Cindy likes to call it West Littleton.
We do. It is West Littleton.
Yeah, the whole village over near the train station and that whole area. So we're looking at doing a bite-sized piece of it, which would be immediately adjacent to the train station. And I think Matthew and I are both excited to bring something forward for the residents to see. And I think it's going to meet a lot of the needs of the goals that were set forth through the master plan. So that was just a tease more than anything. It wasn't really an update.
What time is that on Thursday evening? Do we know?
Nice. 7 p.m. I actually just got the planning board's.
Joe, do you know off the top of your head, Joe?
Thought it was 6:30.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Elijah, Joe, thanks.
Just for planning purposes for the public. Thank you. Mr. Glavy, do you have anything to share?
Yes. Saturday, driving back into Littleton Saturday morning, cold day, as you can recall. I was coming through the common. I saw looked to be a bunch of students out there with plastic bags, and I said, boy, that's a cold day to be doing whatever they're doing. And they had masks on. And drive a little bit further on, and by the Congregational Church, there's more of them out there on the side of the road. And I went by the castle and the trees, and there was another group of them, and then I come up New Estate Road and went to my house, and another group was walking up the street, and they were out picking up trash. And it was Littleton High School students. And I tried to find online at the Littleton Public Schools website, and there was some reference to it there. And I don't know if other groups were involved, but at least the National Honor Society was a participant in that. And it was terrific. I mean, cold day, and it didn't scare them off, and they were out there picking up trash and making the town look wonderful. So I just thought they deserved a shout out.
That's excellent. Thank you. Mr. Knox?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Nordhaus?
I just want to add on to what Chuck said about the 40R project. I want to, again, apart from his grant expertise, I want to give a shout out to Joe for his work on that. He's done all the heavy lifting. Well, he and Maren have done both a lot of heavy lifting on it. It's all the non-glamorous stuff, like actually writing the documents and figuring out who they need to email. And it's going to be great for Littleton. I think, like Chuck said, it matches up and meshes so well with the master plan goals. It's really, I think it's going to be a boon. And I just want to thank Joe for the work, because it was behind the scenes, and he deserves a pat on the back. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, and appreciate that, and appreciate all the work that also the members are doing, because makes it easy for Maren and I to work to support, but all of you are providing your input and your thoughts on what works for Littleton, and it really is a great team effort.
And thanks to Maren too. She's not here, and I would be gushing just as much about her. She's also works very hard on this.
Great, thank you. Well, looking forward to the meeting on Thursday night, so we can see the presentation and learn more about the project. I encourage the public to attend that meeting and become familiar with the project as much as possible now at the beginning stages of it, as there'll be more information coming forward in the coming weeks leading up to town meeting. So thank you both, Chuck and Matthew, for your updates on that project. I personally do not have anything to share this evening for members' updates. So we will move on to item number 4 on our agenda. We have a request to use town property and streets for the filming of Marble from the series Dexter, I believe.
Right.
Mr. Ansaldi? Yep.
Yes.
Excellent.
So once again, Joe has been rock star for this meeting, and Joe's been working with the production company. So I'll allow Joe to just explain what's going on there, and then I have Joe the couple of maps, just so you know that I can share as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anthony. And board members, just to let you know, I did elevate as a panelist. Shows up as Ryan Cook. He, as well as someone from a site selection company, Victoria, they have been our primary points of contact for a request for shooting a scene of television show here in Littleton on Nagog Hill Road. The map indicates the location where the set would be and a detour going around the filming utilizing Newtown Road, and sorry, just needed to zoom in here, as well as Fort Pond, in order to loop around that area. It's going to be something that is really specifically a day. It looks like while our material has a date of January 29th, most recent conversations are that it could move to the following week, just to really speak about or just to address recent changes in production as well as weather. And I do see that we have Ryan Cook here.
Good evening, Mr. Cook.
Hi,
How are
everyone.
you?
Good. How are you? I also have Victoria with me as well, who's been the point person on this. So thank you guys so much for inviting us. As was discussed, Victoria and I are local location managers. We both are from Massachusetts and live here, working on this project Marble for Showtime. We're going to be filming for 2 days over in Boxborough. And we have some driving work, a scene where a car breaks down on the side of the road and somebody offers to come get some help and try to jump the vehicle. So it's a pretty simple scene. We just wanted it in a very beautiful area, and that section of the road where you can look down on the lake sort of fits exactly what we're looking for. So right now it's slated for one half of the day, currently scheduled for Wednesday, February 10th. We would do it in the first half of the day. There potentially would be some prep work that we would have to do the day before, depending on if we actually get some snow. So we have fingers crossed that we're going to get a little bit of snow and it's going to stick on the ground. If we don't get snow, we would like to put in some fake snow. It's basically just chipped ice. The day before, we wouldn't have to close the road. We would just need a police detail with us to help put some snow on the side of the road on some fake ice, and then film for that first part of the day on Wednesday the 10th, putting that road closure in place. And then once we're done filming and go back to Boxborough, we would open that road up by early to mid-afternoon. The other thing is in addition to the road closure, we would be looking to rent out the Nagog Hill Farm property that I believe the town owns. Is that correct?
The Orchard, yes.
Correct. Yeah.
The Orchard, yes. To help with staging of some of our equipment, mainly like some bathroom trailers, the hand sanitizing stations and whatnot that we have as part of our COVID, our rigorous COVID protocol. So I think Victoria's been in touch a little bit with talking about the rental of that as well. So all in all, it's pretty straightforward stuff. I think we've already flyered the neighborhood once, and we'll do so again, doing community outreach to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, has our schedule, has our contact information, all that good stuff.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we do have Chief Pinard on the call with us. I didn't know if you had any questions or comments.
No
Chief?
questions or comments, Madam Chair. I've worked very closely with Ryan and Victoria. They had 2 technical days or 3 technical days out there already, just viewing the site, making sure they're clear over there. They've been very easy to work with. I think it's going to be a pretty smooth transition for a detail that day, and I have no issue whatsoever.
All right, excellent. Any questions from the board?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
I know Sarah Doublet is right near there. I don't know what the sort of area that you're going to be using, but I want to make sure everyone's aware that it's not only conservation land, but there are sections of that that are sacred to the Neshoba Indians, and we want to make sure we're respectful of that.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. That's totally something we are aware of that type of stuff on a lot of properties that we're filming in. We're working with the trustees at a lot of other properties for this show. So that's something that we will definitely take consideration of. And like I said, all of our work is taking place on the roadway.
Okay.
And so our at the most we would step off the side of the road, just for moving around the vehicle, but we're not going off into the woods or anything like that.
That's in that case, I can't see any issues at all.
Right.
Great. Any other questions or comments from other board members?
And a motion.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Excited to have the opportunity for Littleton to be showcased in the series, and looking forward to seeing the final result.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Okay. I will move that the select board approve the use of Nagog Hill Road, including closure of a portion of the road as approved by the police chief for filming of marble, and the use of the parking lot Nagog Hill Orchard as conditioned and approved by the town administrator.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Mr. Nordhaus is aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
You're on mute, Chuck.
Stop yelling at me, Anthony. Mr. DeCoste is aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Ryan.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you. I don't think it does matter to the motion, but Anthony, did you or Joe or somebody going to communicate with Charles Auger? Because he's actually managing the property.
I already have.
Yeah, great, fine.
Okay, excellent. So next we have our host community agreement.
So there was a late draft, a late version that went out to you late this afternoon. It was just a minor revision that was made. It was in section 11, just making clear that this agreement will run in the event that Northbridge sells the property to the next property owner, if there is one. And other than that, there was just a typo. So town council has vetted this and is fine with that. Just to reiterate, it's $1.24 million in a mitigation payment through this HCA. Projects that have been identified, public safety communications for $400,000, the Taylor Street Complete Streets, and that's basically sidewalks on Taylor Street, which is a state road. Also, with the hope and working with Chris Stoddard, that would include a pedestrian crossing signal, sort of like the one that's at Kimball's. That project would be approximately $350,000. There's some water department infrastructure for $250,000. Just as a caveat to that, I think that the water department was expecting, the commissioners were expecting an additional $80,000. It's $320,000. So it shifted from the water department to the sidewalks and the Complete Streets project, where that's a state road. We have to follow MassDOT's lead on that and make it to their standards. There is an additional $200,000 for other projects, and I have just some comments that have been made in the past by select board members, as sidewalks or et cetera. And then the other $40,000 was for the Conservation Trust. So tonight we'd be looking at you to approve the HCA, not necessarily if you're not prepared to discuss the funding right now in those categories, but at least approve the HCA so we can get that back to Northbridge, and then that would trigger the first installment of the payment in the amount of $600,000.
Okay. We'll start with the HCA itself. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Go ahead, Mr. DeCoste.
So, am I on mute, Anthony? No, I'm good. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. So, where there was the expectation that the water department was, there was very real numbers around that proposed expense. It was 320 or 330.
I just talked to Nick tonight. It was either 320 or 330, Chuck. I think it was an additional 80,000, so maybe it's 330.
330. Okay, so is there, with the $200,000 in kind of fluff, the sidewalks, et cetera, although I'm a huge proponent of sidewalks, is there flexibility for us to
There is.
not make that whole necessarily, but at least make an effort to work that a little bit more and massage that number to help meet that commitment?
There is. That 200,000, Chuck, that is sort of undesignated at this point in time. So the board, at your pleasure,
At our pleasure, we could reallocate
Correct.
those. Okay, all right.
You know, and maybe the sidewalks come in lower too, Chuck. And I was telling that to Nick tonight. You know, a lot to happen there.
All right, appreciate that. The other thing I want to say is, actually, it's kudos to you and quote unquote your administration.
Well, Selectman Knox has been really a champion of this.
Not relative to this, and I love Joe, and everybody knows I love Joe, but that's not where the kudos were going here. The fact that we got this in the 11th hour tonight is, I would say, in this case, acceptable, because there was some, some pedestrian changes. There was some, like you said, some typos and things like that, and that's expected. Appreciate that. The previous administration oftentimes would be getting stuff at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock sometimes, just before a meeting. So it's very much appreciated that we're not getting those things when we don't have any opportunity to review. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Ansaldi.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions, Mr. Nordhaus?
Thank you. Given all the concerns that residents have expressed to the board regarding traffic, I want to point out that the HCA that we're voting on tonight doesn't actually specifically address that. That's addressed by the planning board special permit, which is available on the town website in the planning board page, and also in tonight's packet starts on page 41. On page 41 is the operational considerations that cover that. I also wanted to ask, there was some discussion of a fine for turning right out of that parking lot. And I believe town council mentioned that we would need to add it to the bylaws, but I might be misremembering. And I don't see it in the HCA unless I missed it.
No, yeah. So thanks, Matthew. So correct. There's two ways to enforce a violation, and I'm glad Chief Penard's still on. So one is a Chapter 90, and then another way is a bylaw violation. In discussing this, the Chapter 90 is stronger because we have the ability to attach non-payment to renewal of a license or a registration. A town bylaw, a lot more complicated, and we have, believe it or not, we have more teeth with the Chapter 90 that the police department would enforce. So, yeah, that's the way that right now there would be a sign at the end of that street that says no right turn for local deliveries only. Chief, I don't know if you're on mute, but if you want to add anything else to that.
No, you're 100% correct. The town bylaw, if it's unpaid, what's our sanctions going to be in regards to an unpaid fine of a town bylaw? Whereas if we cite them on Chapter 90, registry is now involved automatically by the writing the citation. So therefore, registration can be revoked, license can be revoked, and whatnot.
Yeah. So Matthew, to that point, so if the fine that they were talking about that you may have heard was a $300 fine.
Yeah.
Well, if we went with a town bylaw and now we had to go to court, we'd have to pay a police officer 4 hours minimum pay. And at the end of the day, it's actually almost we could be losing money on enforcing it through a town bylaw. So that's why Chapter 90 is, for a multitude of reasons, is probably the way to go on this.
That's great. That's great. I just was curious.
Yeah, and you always have the option later if there's a problem, we can revisit this down the road.
I'm sure that Chapter 90 will be fine. And I think we also talked about putting the fine on the sign. Like you were going to pay this. You were going to pay this much if you turn right.
And they did say that. So Matt, I didn't know what the right-hand fine was on a Chapter 90. So if we want it, that's something that we couldn't have them include on the sign, then they'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board about the agreement?
Ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
Thanks, Chief.
Yes, please. I would just want to clarify that we're voting just on the agreement. I'd like to revisit the allocation of the monetary aspect of this with the board, just to have a further discussion about that
Yep.
at
Yeah,
a
so
later date.
This mostly speaks to what we're getting, and what we do with it is can be another vote. Another day.
Exactly. Yep. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
All right, then I will move that the select board approve the host community agreement with NBP Northbridge Partners 2, Littleton LLC.
Second.
Madam Chair, before we vote, there is a hand raised by Gary LaCroix.
Okay.
Joe, you want to let him in?
Sure.
Good evening.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. So I had not seen the financial settlement, so I think that's great news. And I think, Chuck, you mentioned about the $200,000 it being an open-ended item. I think you said you might want to have a table that discussion about what to use some of those funds for, but I think it would be, I'd like to suggest that you consider looking at some of our transportation needs with that, really targeting that preferentially for some of those funds, specifically with some of the non, maybe pedestrian or bicycle friendly type amenities that we might want to consider. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
We did a kind of a full court press on what we might need as far as mitigation and things like that when we were negotiating the HCA and sidewalks and transportation mitigating factors and things like that were some of what we had come up with. So it's definitely part of the conversation, Gary. Thanks for the input.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I seconded.
Okay, excellent. So all those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste?
For the coast is aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Thank you. So next we are on to item 6, Town Administrator and Assistant Town Administrator update.
2 items left here, Madam Chair. There's the Wellington Drive Connector Trail Grant, Mass Trails Grant, and Joe's going to speak to that. And then there's also a follow-up with the 119 Tahadawan Drive with that controlled burn that's being planned. So, Joe, you want to go through that?
Sure. Thanks, Anthony. So first up, and I'm just going to share my screen for a second, and then
Sure.
After that, Anthony, if you can put that back up, that would be great. So back a couple weeks ago, we had Chris Stoddard in to talk about the Cooper Wellington Trail connection, basically following the delineation that you see in front of you now. That application was submitted to MassDOT. We actually should be finding out sometime over the next 2 weeks whether or not we were successful for that. At that time, I had mentioned that working with BPAC, there's a second application. This is sort of a belt and suspenders approach to try to get this trail done. So working with Ann Grace, we're looking for approval from the select board to submit this grant application to the Mass Trails grant program. So this grant application is basically going to be utilizing some of the same footprint coming off of Wellington Drive and connecting through the woods to the Cooper Farm. Where this blue dot is, that's approximate location of where a crossing will be, a bridge, and that the scope of work would basically be this red portion to then connect to the existing trail that's part of Cooper. Trail would be comprised of stone dust to meet ADA requirements. There is a 20% match that is being provided by the developer. I am working with Ann as well as other department staff in order to finalize the language for the grant, just making sure that everything is straightforward for submission next Monday. Like I said, it's a belt and suspenders type thing should the MassDOT not make it through, but definitely want to take advantage of this program in case we do not get funding.
Madam Chair,
Please, go ahead.
there was some talk about taking part of that path and putting it on the land that we now rent out for $1 to a farmer to get it on the other side of the stone wall. Did that go anywhere?
So as part of this, that wouldn't apply because we'd be utilizing the existing trail on Cooper. I believe what you were referring to was on the other side of the property from Cooper Farms. I believe Chris was looking at that, and it's my recollection that there was actually an agricultural use restriction that was getting in the way of moving it to the other side of that tree line. But I can double back and get back to you on that, Joe. For this grant, the work wouldn't be provided in that area.
Okay, thanks.
So if I could just jump in there, Joe, my understanding when Chris Todd was in the last meeting, we discussed this, is that decision hasn't been made yet. And for us to get the grant, it's not specific to which side of the wall or which side of the tree line.
Correct. That will have to be worked out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
Please, yep.
Okay, I'll move that the select board vote to support and authorize submission of an application by the town administrator to Mass Trails Grant Program for a trail improvement grant for the Wellington Drive Connector Trail.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Montanari? Montanari. Oh, that's so funny. Mr.
That's Thursday's meeting.
DeCoste? I'm looking at Chuck, right?
They're very similar, to be fair. They
I
look
know.
almost
I'm like
identical.
stuck between Nordhaus, Matthew, and Mr. DeCoste.
Not sure who I am, but Debbie, aye.
Yeah, and Mr. Nordhaus.
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is
Thanks, Lisa
approved as
Flannery.
written. And next we're on to 119 Tehadawon Road, the authorization for filing of permits.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This is pretty straightforward. Looking for authorization from the select board to allow for the town administrator to sign on behalf of the board necessary applications and permitting documents for conservation building as may be necessary associated with the demolition of the single family structure at 119 Tehadawon.
Okay. And can I just jump in here for a second on this 119 Tehadawon, this project? So I had to recuse myself during the whole negotiation of the sale of this property just because of where I work. But I no longer need to do that now that the sale's been concluded. I just need to be brought up to speed on this project. Admittedly, I really don't know where we stand as far as the affordable housing component of it. I was not aware that we were demolishing 119 Tehadawon Road. So I just at some point would like to have a discussion with the board or somebody and just try to get up to speed on this property and where we're at with respect to basically the affordable housing component of it, the property that we were going to be using. I think it's part of the grant, Anthony, or we're waiting for.
Maybe Mr. Montanari can help you with that.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying Montanari, because I'm thinking about that when we were building up to this.
I was the point person through the negotiations, Madam Chair, but I honestly, it caught me as a surprise that we were looking at a demolition tonight too. So,
yeah.
I mean, it had been talked about that there wasn't going to be any other use for it. And as far as the housing goes, what we need is your steady hand back involved again, because, we've got potential issues with parts of the property about where it's going to be able to be done, or it can be located without passing tests and without impacting the integrity of the property, those kind of issues, which we did talk about during the negotiation. So you would have been out of the loop on that somewhat, but
Okay,
I would think Joe or Anthony could bring you up to speed. I could, Tom Harrington could on those aspects of it. But as far as the housing thing goes, other than staking out the ground that it should be done, and we've got the funding for it, that ball needs to be picked up.
Right.
okay,
Yeah, to my understanding is that the land would be then transferred over, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, to the
Correct.
Housing Trust, to determine, I think it was identified, was it the left portion of the property, the westerly portion that was where it was, what's that, Chuck?
Northwest quad, like the northwest corner,
Yeah,
the Highland.
right. So at
Up by
some
West
point,
Littleton, Chuck?
Wesley, so at some point we'd have to just make sure that all due diligence that that's a buildable lot and that what is earmarked, and then transfer that over to the Housing Trust. Joe, you want to add anything? I know you worked on this before.
Yeah, and I mean, it may be something that we can either separately have a conversation or bring back in front of the whole board. With the MVP grant, when it was drafted and we entered into the agreement with the state for that, Amy had included demolition and remediation of like the oil tank, and looking at some subsurface areas that basically just almost like a trash heap. We did some soil tests, identified everything was clear. Town council gave us a all clear to go ahead with that purchase. The MVP grant actually covers cost of demolition. So that was the demolition of the existing house was always part of it. The portion now involving the Littleton Housing Trust is basically that we're going to have to undertake a survey so we can identify where that affordable lot will be, and then carve it off through the approval not required A&R process and apply to the planning board. So we definitely, as Paul said, do need to get back with the Affordable Housing Trust, identify those steps to facilitate that transfer to the Affordable Housing Trust. And then also, select board, staff, we then also have to identify exactly how we're going to be then dealing with the affordable units, what the scope is going to be, whether there's any additional work that we need to do, or are we just basically transferring things over to the Affordable Housing Trust.
okay, perfect. Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay,
Was there a motion with that?
Yeah, I'll pull it up, Paul, for you.
No, I've got it here, Anthony.
Okay.
Move that the select board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign on behalf of the town applications for permitting associated with the demolition of the existing single-family structure at 119 Tahadawan Road, and the submission of an approval not required plan to the planning board, and the waiver of any associated fees.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. DeCosta, Mr. Montanari, or aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Mr. Nordhaus is aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. And so the next agenda item is meeting minutes from January 11th, 2021. Did everybody have a chance to review those, and were there any comments?
Wonderful as usual.
They appear to be complete and accurate.
Excellent.
So
All right, perfect. We have a motion?
Yep. I'll move that the select board vote to approve the regular session meeting minutes of January 11, 2021.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
I just wanted to get you once, Matthew. Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Yes.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The minutes are approved as written. And next we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Yes.
Cindy Napoli is aye. So our meeting is adjourned for the evening. And I just wanted to remind people